Hi, I'm the Reverend Jani Wild, and I'm here interviewing the Reverend Ale Trillos. And I'm so glad to have you with me today and here, and that you have agreed to just share your story with us. So let's just start off. And I know you're fairly new to Salinas, so tell us how you got here and some of your story.
Thank you for this time. And yes, I'm relatively new to the reality here in California. I am originally from Colombia, and I migrated to New York, to be more specific, 20 years ago. Last September, September 26th, I arrived to Salinas, so that can give you an idea. Yes, it has been more than a year that I arrived here. I came to California in 2015 to San Francisco for vacation, and that was it. I mean, it was a great vacation in San Francisco, but I didn't have any idea about California or the culture other than what you were able to watch in the movies. So I accepted the call last July. It was an interesting process. I have to be honest, I wasn't looking for a new call. Kind of like came to me. And I would say that that was how the Holy Spirit moves in mysterious ways. They basically needed someone with my profile, my skills, bilingual and bicultural. California is a culture itself, and every part of California, Central California, I assume that they have their own culture. The same thing like in New York. When you go to the Bronx or Queens or Long Island or Manhattan, there are some specific elements that you can say that will add to that specific group of people living in that area. We cannot define a person by this or by that. We always need to look at someone in different layers on what that means for that person as a whole in terms of his or her identity.
It's really interesting that you bring up the layers, because I do think it is the layers of people that make you who you are, and your layers are pretty deep. So you said you came to this country 20 years ago to New York, right?
Yes.
And so you weren't born here.
No, I wasn't.
Did your family come here? Did you?
No.
How did you get here?
I am originally from Colombia. I arrived in my early 20s, so that will give you an idea how old I am. And I am an only child. My parents are still in Colombia. I am first generation immigrant coming to the United States. I came because of violence. And I don't want to get into details about that. That would be part of a different moment, a different conversation. But basically, my family, they were victims. We all were victims of systematic violence that was happening in Colombia. And then I had the American visa as a tourist, and that made things much easier for me to migrate to the United States. Initially, the idea was for me to come for a couple of months, maybe a year, but things turned out in a different way, and I ended up staying in New York.
Wow. And so when you got to New York City, you stayed with your relative, which that's great. And then how did you proceed to, get established in New York and found a job, and somewhere in there you went to seminary? Sure.
So the seminary part took a while. In my specific case, so I came as with my tourist visa. So first thing was like, I need to be able to communicate, right? My English, my written and my reading English was good. I was able to really understand. I went through college in Colombia, and that was helpful. So I was able to read, write, and understand English. My problem was communication. And then I knew I need to be in college. I had the some financial resources that helped me to put myself through an ESL program with the City University of New York. This is before September 11, I must say. So things were different too in terms of immigration. New York is an expensive city, and even though I had some savings, that wasn't enough. So I had to find a job as a babysitter initially, and that was helpful. That because talking to children, that's that put you through fire, and that make you learn the language really fast and to be able to communicate. So that was wonderful. And my great grandmother was a faithful woman back in Colombia, and she always made me promise her to wherever I go, I will always look for a church. So I ended up attending an Episcopal church because I was invited by a friend from Venezuela who used to attend this church, and she loved the hospitality. The 12th commandment, as I call it, hospitality in the Episcopal church, which is, once you have the service, once you have finished the Holy Eucharist, you will have delicious food waiting for you in the parish hall. And people were good, people were welcoming, and I like that. I like that kind of environment. So I started my journey like everyone else, getting to know the Episcopal Church, getting excited. Finding the possibility for women to be ordained in the Episcopal Church as part of my Christian formation. I grew up with the Jesuits in Colombia, so former Roman Catholic. And even though the Jesuits are open mind, that wasn't a reality that women would be ordained.
You talk about immigrating and immigration being different pre 9/11 to post 9/11, and I'm curious. The word immigration, we hear it tossed around a lot now, and it is different, and obviously even more different in the last few years. How has your immigration and the conversations, say, with your family about it, and your ministry in Salinas, how does that all help you and play out in your ministry?
With when I was talking about September 11 was mainly there is this portion about your legal status in your documents, right? And that makes you self-aware, that I am a recipient, I am an international student, or I am an asylum victim, or the kind of like your paperwork and reading that label puts in perspective where you are, right? And the resources that you have access to. After September 11, even though the situation, and I would say the context, let's put it that way, affected mostly Muslims, right? The fact that I was an immigrant, I think in a way touched me. and shaped me. Even though I didn't look like them, still, I made me self-aware that, I am an immigrant post September 11, and then, my status depends on this specific document. And I was recommended to, once I was leaving home, just to carry my visa, photocopy of my visa in my wallet or in my purse. And then those kind of details make you self-aware of where you are, to carry that document that will identify who you are. And then I think that's something that has helped me to be sensitive to, when I meet someone in ministry, to just not to judge a book by its cover, just to really sit down and listen to that person and hear what that person has to say, and listen what the story is about, why they ended up in this country and what they are looking at. There is a common denominator for any immigrant, and it has to do with, I had to leave my country, and I was looking for better opportunities, not only for me, but also my family. I'm always thinking, we are always thinking about those who are left behind. It's not something that is only affecting you, but it's who is left behind. And I think that that's something that brings us all together and help us understand where we are. I became U.S. citizen in 2012, and then I had to understand and fill out the paperwork and navigate the system through Federal Plaza, and that gave me skills to understand as well when people are in that process. So that has been helpful.
So do you end up assisting people with the process now?
I mean, in ministry, it's difficult not to be, I cannot describe things like black and white,
Right.
There is always this thin line where people will come to you and will ask you questions, and then they will ask you for letter of recommendations because, it's important for your own case and the relationship of the church. And even, things like your certificate of baptism, for instance, that would be helpful for immigration, or your marriage certificate, right?
It sounds as though, your background in immigration is very, very helpful for you here in Salinas. And, I think one of my questions, do you still have to carry all your paperwork in your purse, or is your driver's license enough now?
Yeah, my driver's license, because it's the real ID. I guess real ID makes a difference, right?
Yeah.
I express to people that is like, I haven't been in a border town, even though I'm coming, the place where I'm coming from in Colombia, we are at the border with Venezuela, but it's another country in Latin America. We speak the same language. But here is from what I have heard from people that they come from El Paso, for instance, and they call the border, right? La Frontera. That's how I feel here in Salinas. When I move from one neighborhood to another neighborhood, when I read the names of the streets, for instance, is familiar to me because, of course, the influence of Spain, right? The process of colonization from Spain. But at the same time, it's like I am in America and we speak English, and And you hear this English, Spanish constantly here, at least in Salinas. So it's an interesting experience, something that I didn't have in New York, even though you will move from different neighborhoods and you will hear thousands of languages, right? Taking public transportation or going to college. It's more like United Nations, New York.
Mm.
But here is something completely different. It's more like, I'm definitely immersed into worlds, the English speaking world and the Spanish speaking world.
And how do those two worlds come together to work in Salinas? Is there a lot of racial issues happening or social economic issues that keep things apart? Are they coming together or does it keep them more apart?
It's a complex reality because you already mentioned it. I mean, we're talking about ethnicity, we're talking about language, we're talking about socioeconomical status, we are talking about politics too. So we are bringing different elements in here, right? In the church, for instance, St. Paul, San Pablo, and the fact that we call ourselves St. Paul's, San Pablo. And for me, it's like this is a church that used to be and it's not anymore. We are moving towards something that is new, what God is calling us to be, right? And definitely, I had the diocese and the resources that the diocese provided with paving the way for me to receive that the church where I am today. Uh, and definitely, I mean, it was required to have one priest that was bicultural, that was bilingual. Uh, and it takes a lot of curiosity, I would say holy curiosity. It takes a lot of listening, intentional listening, because every person is unique, and then it takes to listen that story, right? What you see, what that person represents, and the investment of that person, right, in this community, because
Yeah.
that's the other part too. My church is part of this community. That's what I hear from people as well, and that's what St. Paul, San Pablo is not disconnected from that reality. Um, it's hard for me to talk a little bit more about the race issue. Definitely, we have them. Uh, in the pandemic, we have experienced, you know, um, situations and some social problems that we didn't see before, or we had this blind spot. And now, with everything that is happening in this country, they are coming to the surface. And people are, I think there is this collective awakening. And definitely the church has an important role in this. But I have learned, studying the scriptures, that Jesus met people where they were. And then it's a good reminder for me to be intentional about that, to meet people where they are and use those encounters to let people explore for both parties, right? The
Yeah.
two people involved to discover one another.
Yeah. It sounds like there could be some really good growth and learnings coming out in all this. And maybe the church can have a stronger role in changing things and be a strength to it. I think sometimes people worry that whether the church is a strength or an impediment to progress in
Yes.
relationships, right? It sounds more like you can be.
So let me share with you, yesterday we had the mutual review of ministry in my church. And then I was really excited to hear that every single member was able to participate. The Spanish speaking members and the English speaking members came together. And for me to see a vestry being in this place where language is not a limitation. And I am that bridge that is connecting these two different groups of people, but they are aware that they are part of one church that worships in two languages. Let's put it that way. To me, was one of those moments where God's grace is revealed in this process, and then gave me a lot of energy, gave me a lot of hope that we can move forward, and that this process will continue, and we are bringing reconciliation and healing, because you find in this church all these relationships, right? The employers, the employees, the managers, the people that work in the field, and people that they are business owners, people who are part of the medical industry, retired people, teachers, right? I have other ethnic groups like Filipino, like Japanese. So I can see the opportunities going in different places.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us and insight as far as, I don't know, words to get through things, words to keep us going in this pandemic or through all the racial unrest in our country and the immigration things here in California?
I mean, I think that we should be looking closely, and I would say that have these ways to observe from the margins, but also to be intentional, like John the Baptist, and be that a person that even though from the margins he's crying out, right? And John meets God even in that unusual and weird place. And I think that America is going through a wilderness right now. The pandemic has offered this opportunity for us to experience this collective wilderness. And I think that we should be attentive to that, because we learn important skills like survival. And I think that that's something that immigrants understand, and they bring to the table, how to adapt, how to survive, and how to move forward. And I think that that would be something important for us to consider.
Thank you so much, Ale. It's been so much fun to talk with you, and I hope we get to more time to get to know each other even better.
Thank you so much. You are doing wonderful things, and thank you for your ministry too, and this specific ministry.